In this season of Advent, we have talked about the fact that there are several themes that emerge. And those themes lead to sort of a curriculum in many churches. The themes run something like this: hope. And you could say that the season of Advent is a season of hope. The hope that Israel had for deliverance, but also the echo forward, the apocalyptic, the eschatological implications, that there was an ultimate hope for all mankind. There's a season of peace. Of course, you know that there are references to peace. Jesus is the Messiah, who is the Prince of Peace. There is the echo of joy, and we sing about that. Joy to the world. The King has come. The Messiah has come. And then, of course, the season of love. And in many traditions, we'll actually take the 4 weeks leading up to a celebration of Jesus' birth, and we'll illustrate those with 4 different candles. You know, the idea being the light of the world, who is Jesus, brings and illuminates hope, peace, joy, and love. This is the second week as we're looking towards Advent, and the theme is peace. And it's appropriate that we sang songs like "Let There Be Peace on Earth" and "Let It Begin With Me." It's appropriate that we sang today the story of Spafford, who said, "When sorrows like sea billows roll." You know, you've probably sung that song many times, but Spafford was a fellow who was rather wealthy, and he suffered a great loss in the late 1800s when there was a depression, and he lost most of his money. And so it was decided that he and the family would go from the United States to England, take a break from everything and everyone. They would go visit relatives and friends. And so at the last moment, there was some reason that he was unable to board the ship, and so his wife and children went ahead. There was a storm, and the ship sank. And after much anxiety, he heard by telegram that his wife had survived, but his children were lost. And so he set sail to go to England to be with his wife, to comfort her. And as they were sailing the same route that the ship had gone before, the one that had sunk, and he reached the point where he knew that that ship had gone down, he was inspired to write those words. When sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, you have taught me to say, it is well with my soul. There was a certain peace and tranquility that stabilized him, and he was able to say, when peace like a river smooth my path through life, or this horrible tragedy, this place in the Atlantic where I know my children are lost. And he wrote that song, the song that we just sang. The theme of peace, of course, being part of this time of year, we take from the book of Luke, chapter 2 and verse 14, where the shepherds are in the fields and the Messiah's birth is announced to them. And the angels appear and they sing, and they announce to the shepherds that something dramatic has happened. And they hear the words sung or announced: "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests." Now, that peace, they were familiar with the concept at that time because they lived under Pax Romana. And that peace was an absence of war. And of course, the absence of war was affected by the Roman soldiers saying, you get out of line and you're dead. You get out of line, you'll be thrown in jail. And of course, there was a boiling, churning discontent under the surface. And every now and then, because the Jews would be agitating, and there were numerous rebellions, and they were hoping for a Messiah who would, according to the prophecies of Daniel, throw off the yoke of the beast. And they all understood that the symbolism of the beast was the world-ruling empire. They lived with Assyria, they lived with Babylon, they lived with Persia, and now they were living with this monster. And this monster was bigger and stronger and more fierce than any that had gone before. And they lived during an era of, well, we don't have to build walls around our cities because we enjoy Pax Romana, Roman peace. And of course, growing up in England, I was taught as a kid, if you want to understand something about the British road system, if there is ever a straight line, that's because the Romans built that road 2,000 years ago. The British never built a straight road. The Rolling English drunkard built the Rolling English road, we were told. But the Romans built straight roads. Why did they build straight roads? So that they could march the legions to any part of the empire and put down and crush any rebellion, any independence, any variation from the one golden rule. You can worship whatever you like, but first of all, you will worship the emperor. So Pax Romana was the absence of war, the enforced agreement with the government of the day. But again, boiling beneath. You ask, well, what were the shepherds doing out in the field? Well, I'll tell you what they were probably doing out in the field, avoiding taxation. You remember why Mary and Joseph ended up in Bethlehem? Because under Caesar Augustus, the whole world had to be taxed. And so you had to go and you had to register. And that was the family seat, Bethlehem. They were both descendants of David, through their long lineage. But the shepherds in the field, you could say, well, they were hirelings, and that's what hirelings had to do. And there's also a good argument to be made for they were out in the field, so they couldn't be taxed. They couldn't have to pay the head tax. They didn't have to submit to the Roman Pax Romana. And here come the angels and say, good news. All your people are talking about a Messiah, and there were a lot of discussions about Messiah. A lot of false alarms, a lot of false promise. But they received the announcement of a peace that was different than Roman peace. A peace that was not just the absence of war, but a peace that apparently they would understand, like Spafford. There was a peace that passes understanding, a peace that affects the mind and the heart of an individual, that enables them to walk through warfare and live in peace. All sorts of philosophers have tried to explain and understand that. I grew up in the 60s, and there was this little group that became really popular. You may never have heard of them, but they were called the Beatles. All right? And John Lennon, was very much somebody who was into anti-establishment stuff. We want to do our own thing. We want to grow our own hair our own way. We don't want to think our own way, be our own way. But as the 60s were a time of churning and discontent and throwing off the norms. A lot of people were becoming more violent, more strident. And he observed in his the song he wrote called Revolution. He said this, you say you want a revolution. He said, well, we all want to change the world. You say you'll change the Constitution. Well, we'd all love to change your head. You tell me it's the institution. Well, you better free your mind instead. It's ironic that all sorts of people want to overthrow all sorts of things and to find a new and a satisfying and a peaceful way. But he concluded, look, everything I see around me isn't working. The only thing you can really free, the only place you can find tranquility, you can curse the institution. There's another poet said, in the British pubs, people curse the government and shovel hot food down. He said, but where do you find peace and tranquility? It begins in the head. It begins in the heart. It begins in the thinking. It begins in the emotions of people. And so we're talking about a peace here that's not just the absence of war, but an inner peace. An inner peace. We sang about it a moment ago. O little town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie. Above a deep and dreamless sleep, the silent stars go by. Yet in the dark street shines the everlasting light. Why? The hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight. What appears? This Messiah who is not going to conquer the world and bring peace through force, but he is going to bring peace through sacrifice. He's going to bring peace through himself. And that just blows people's mind. It's different. This is why Revelation speaks about, I heard the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He's going to conquer for his people. And then I looked and said, well, where's this Lion of the tribe of Judah? And what did I see? A lamb sacrificed. That's totally different. I was watching a little blip with Jordan Peterson the other day. Anybody ever heard of Jordan Peterson? He's a good Alberta man. He comes from Fairview up there, a place which he described as scraped from the prairies. Okay, but he was in conversation with a Muslim, and the Muslim simply asked him, "What do you think the purpose of life is?" And he answered rather cryptically, "This." What do you mean this? He said, "We're in conversation. We're trying to understand each other. We're trying to help each other. We're trying to live with each other." If he just said, well, the purpose of life is first and foremost what Jesus said, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. He didn't say that because it would not have been received by the Muslim who was talking with him. But he said, the purpose of life is. And then he began to explain, to find peace with my brother and my neighbor. And, in a very limited way, he said that begins with conversation, interaction, trying to understand you and where you come from, trying to work out differences, trying to live peacefully. I thought that was, a very powerful insight. He's a smart man, and that was one of the smartest things that he could have said in a very difficult circumstance and situation. And so here, the hopes and fears are met in you, Jesus. How silently the wondrous gift is given. So God imparts to human hearts the blessing of his heaven. No ear may hear his coming, but in this world of sin, where meek souls will receive him still, the dear Christ enters in. Oh, right. This is the way of peace, allowing Christ to enter into your life. This is the way of peace, to find blessed assurance, because he is the embodiment of, all your hopes, all your fears, or all your aspirations, or your worries are found in him, and the answer is found in him. The biggest enemy we all face is death, and we're going to talk about that in about an hour and a half. But where is the answer to that? It's in him. He is the first person to say, I understand life. I can give up my life because I have power over death. And I can bring myself back to life. And I can do the same for you. Oh, okay, you can impart a reassurance to my mind and a calm and a peace to my emotions because of who you are and the way you are and what you do. Yeah, I am the way of peace. Oh, I know this past week I spoke to a number of people. We talked about intercessory prayer. We talked about Walter. And finding himself in a panic last night because his wife had fallen, and suddenly there's blood everywhere on the floor. And he has to call for an ambulance, and he has to commit her to the care of other people. But after the initial panic, after the initial distress, there's still concern and discomfort and everything else today. But there is also what we sing about, a blessed assurance. There's a reassurance. There's somebody else involved in all of this. There's somebody walking with me, talking with me through this. I talked to, another person who has gone through a long trial over a period of several years. And this is a little more involved for him because he was, in very simple terms, he took the leadership of a voluntary organization, a homeowners association. If you live in a condo, you understand that. There are rules and regulations that cover everything. I know I was involved in a little remodeling of a townhouse, and I decided to chip away some concrete from the wall. I thought, well, it could be more simple. And so I did that. Immediately I was contacted by somebody in great agitation. You can't touch the concrete. Why not? It's like my concrete, isn't it? No, the concrete belongs to everybody. Everybody's got to have a vote on whether or not you can touch this concrete. And God forbid that you change the look of a window. Oy vey, I'm glad I don't live in a condo, but it is also reassuring for some people. Now, he's involved in a neighborhood, okay, and it was a very nice neighborhood, and when the neighborhood was established, the builder built, a couple of hundred houses, something like that, and he said all the houses have to be a certain way. You just can't decide to paint your house blue. Everybody has to have a sort of a similar tone. Roofs have to be cedar shakes. You just can't decide to re-roof. I re-roofed my house, nobody hassled me. I said, I want mid-tone gray, and I want architectural shingles. And so I did that about a year ago. And I had to redo it. It was about 21 years since Jerry and I did it. All those years, almost 25 years. 3-tab shingles replaced. I didn't have to answer to anybody. But in this particular development, where he was the president of the Homeowners Association, there was a covenant, there's a contract. And some people decided, well, it costs too much to re-roof the house. And so we're just going to do it our way. And he, as president of the association, had to walk over and say, guys, you got to stop doing this. And they said, no, we're not. It's our house. And he said, look, there are like a couple of hundred houses here. You can't do that. And so there was the issue of an order. There was a freeze in place. And they decided that they were going to try to change the covenants, change the contracts. They went before a judge, and the judge said, you people are crazy. When you bought into this area, you signed a contract that said you'd have a very similar roof to your neighbor. You wouldn't vary all these things. And so they lost. But they couldn't just accept the reality that by law, by contracts they'd signed, by commitment, by consideration for their neighbors. And so my friend, who's the president of the association, has lived with slander and vilification for the last couple of years, and it's been pretty difficult. But they recently had an open meeting, and he was very happy about the fact that he's no longer the president. But in the exit, they had a riotous, let's put it like that. They had an insurrection, let's put it that way, that boiled down to 30 or so people literally screaming and yelling at him and accusing him of being an oppressive, dictatorial individual, accusing him of all sorts of things. And he explained to me how he felt. He said, I began to realize what Jesus lived through. He said, here I have a lawyer, here has a judge that's tell us what to be, and these people are just like wild animals, tearing and snarling and ripping. And he said, everybody got to have their say. And he said, as I sat there and I heard lies being told, misdirection, character assassination, just because they want to do their own thing, and they think I'm stopping them. And it's not me, it's the law. It's not me, it's the association. I don't have any choice. I was put into this place, and if I don't uphold the law, he said, other people can sue me for negligence of responsibility, things like that. And the more he talked about it, he said, there were specific individuals who got up and told lies about things that he may have said or done. And at that particular point, he said, there was one lady, I guess, who got up, and she was a widow. Her husband had died a few months before, and he was one of the objectors and so forth. But he said, it was so easy for me to stand up and to just say, this is a lie. This is not true. You're twisting this. I have a piece of paper right here that says it's not true. And he said, as I sat there, I realized that it was a no-win situation. I had to submit to all of this vilification. And normally I won't say he's an aggressive individual, but let's put it like this, he's very well versed in the law, and he has in his career spent quite a bit of time in court, as an expert witness on numerous things. And he's quite adept at defending himself if called upon. And he said, all I could do was sit there and endure this. And the more I endured, the more I kept reflecting on how much Jesus endured. Being crucified unjustly, being prosecuted unjustly, all of the things he went through. And he said, here I am biting my lip, engaging in a process where all I can do is, okay, I'm not going to hurt this person. I'm not going to slam this person. I'm not going to stir this up. I'm not going to do this. And I said, well, it's almost as if you'd read somewhere the following statement in Matthew 5 and verse 9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Yeah, he said, that's the most difficult thing I could imagine doing. But having made peace with me, I had no other choice but to pass that along and try as best I could to practice it. Yeah, normally, instead of being let there be peace on earth, we might be, anybody ever heard of Bruce Cockburn? Okay, yeah. You remember his very famous song, If I Had a Rocket Launcher? Huh? There are two ways to go with this. Let there be peace on earth, or give me my rocket launcher, and I'll sort some things out. Just as John Lennon said, if you go carrying pictures of Chairman Mao, you ain't going to get anywhere anyhow. You want to change the institution, you want to curse the television, you want to curse the government. He said, free your mind instead. This is what my friend went through. And he said, I really had to think about it. And he said, that's why I called you. I want to talk about it. And so we talked about the implications of Philippians 4 and verse 7. Then God's peace will watch over your hearts and your minds. In other words, your emotions that are going to be torn and ripped, and they're going to reduce you to tears of anger and frustration and discouragement and depression. God's peace will watch over that and your mind. Because when you're emotionally engaged, you don't think straight. You read figures, you don't believe them. You hear facts and you want to scream that can't be true because somebody else said this. You can't sort things out. Because you belong into Christ Jesus, God's peace can never be completely understood. Where do people get the strength to do that? I remember very bluntly and very vividly you have statements in Fox's Book of Martyrs in the early years of the church, how martyrs were put to death. But upon reflection, their persecutors, their executioners, the Roman soldiers said, where did they get the strength for that? Where did they get the calm and peace for that? How these Christians know how to die? Well, I'm not encouraging you to go out and understand death firsthand. What I am encouraging you, though, is to understand that the peace that settles into your mind and your heart from Jesus Christ is beyond the understanding of this world. Our peace is a lack of war. His peace is a calm and a reassurance that says, I know that God is in control, and in Jesus Christ, I have the future. How silently the wondrous gift is given. So God imparts to human hearts the blessing of heaven. No ear may hear his coming, but in this world of sin, where meek souls will receive him still. You see, what is meek? That's an old-fashioned word. It means teachable, open. The way Jordan Peterson said, I will listen to you. Even though you're a Muslim and I don't agree with you, I will still listen to you. And I will try to reach across and shake your hand and connect with you. And in some way share our humanity. The gift that God has given us, which is life. Where the teachable soul will receive him still, the dear Christ enters in. Or, in the words of John, you tell me it's everything else, it's the institution. Well, I recommend you free your own mind instead. That's the way it should be. Jesus was the promised peace from God. And in a world of misery and suffering, but peace, Roman style, they came to understand that, well, when the prophets talked about, and John's big message was, prepare the way of the Lord, which was what simply open your mind, open your heart, receive him on his terms. Make straight paths, do things logically and reasonably the way he has asked you to do. But I don't want to do that. I want to stand up and defend myself right now and make the riot worse. My friend didn't do that. I want to get a lawyer and sue these people for slander. My friend didn't do that. I want to just tell him all that. He didn't do that. He just thought, okay, if I'm a child of God, I will be blessed if I am a peacemaker. This is the season we live in. These are the thoughts and meditations that are recommended to us. And what I'm going to do now is ask that we close the sermon. Wow, this is so early, Bob. Aren't you going to talk for another 20 minutes? No. Be at peace, okay? But let's share 2 or 3 minute commentary by the video that we got for the denomination this week on the subject of peace. Very specifically reflecting on what the prophets promised when they said there will come John the Baptist who will enlighten people and say, start thinking in the way the Messiah thinks. Clear up your thoughts and think directly on him and what he is leading to you. And let's consider the theme of peace in this season of Advent. And after that, we'll be led in worship and in closing by Jean.
In the quiet moments of Advent, we find ourselves in the wilderness, where the hustle and bustle of the world begins to fade away. It's here, in this sacred space, that we encounter the promise of peace. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 1 through 11, a timeless passage, invites us to prepare the way of the Lord. It calls us to make straight in the desert a highway for our God. In the midst of life's deserts, amidst the rough terrain of our own struggles, we yearn for a peace that transcends the chaos of the world. But in this season of Advent, we are reminded that peace is not found in the noise and distractions. It is not found in the clamor of our daily lives. True peace is found in the stillness, in the calm waters of our souls. It's a peace that flows gently, like a river, quenching our deepest thirst. Isaiah's words remind us that God is our shepherd, tending to us like a loving caretaker. He gathers us close and leads us with gentleness and care. This Advent, let us open our hearts to the promise of peace. Let us prepare a way for the Prince of Peace to enter our lives and calm our restless hearts. In this season of Advent, may peace be our guiding light, illuminating our path and bringing solace to our souls. For the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all people shall see it together. Amen.